Pay close attention. What you're about to see is Bible prophecy being fulfilled.
Welcome to another edition of YPN News, bringing you news as it relates to Bible prophecy and foretold by Israel Hawkins. Jeff, tonight we're going to start off our news with more interesting reports coming from Kaufman County, Texas, where yet another prosecutor has been assassinated. Residents of this small Texas town are on edge, and as a result, employees at the Kaufman County Courthouse showed up to work escorted by armed officers. Now, if you remember, we brought you not too long ago news on the assistant DA, Mark Hassey, who was gunned down in broad daylight as he got out of his car just a block from the courthouse on January 31st of this year.
Now, recently, Kaufman County District Attorney Mike McLeland and his wife Cynthia were found shot dead in their home in Forney, Texas, just 12 miles from the courthouse. Judge Bruce Wood said in a statement, "This is not just a random act. There seems to be some connection." Authorities aren't saying if there's any physical evidence linking the murders as they continue their investigation.
Right. Now, according to reports, police say that it appears that the couple was getting ready for bed when someone entered their home and shot Cynthia McLeland in the head and Mike several times in the torso. Mike Leland was the one who gave a stern warning to the shooter of Assistant District Attorney Mark Hassey when he was killed in January 31st this year. He gave a stern warning that he was going to find him, bring him out of his hole, and prosecute him to the fullest extent of the law. Hassey and McLeland had something in common, he said. He said they both liked to get the bad guys, of course, as district attorneys. That was their job.
Forney Mayor tried to reassure residents concerning recent events. Another prosecutor in the office was appointed temporary DA for the next 3 weeks in place of McLeland, and the governor will appoint someone to fulfill the remainder of his term through January 2015. Now, CBS correspondent John Miller said that investigations are ongoing to find out what cases the two were involved with together to see if they can find a connection.
Right. Now, we'll take it a little bit farther to the east, the Far East. North Korean threats have brought about a response from the U.S. The United States Navy is moving anti-missile systems toward North Korea. Now, Kim Jong-un, who is 30 years old and took over for his father, is not the first person to make threats toward South Korea and its allies, in this case, the United States of America. But analysts say things are different. Now, if you remember, not too long ago, a couple years ago, in November of 2010, North Korea fired over 170 rounds into a South Korean island, killing 4 South Koreans.
Now, retired General Walter Sharp, a former commander of U.S. forces in Korea, said in a recent interview that another shelling like the one done in 2010 would trigger a combined military response from both South Korea and the U.S. The United States is showing off its military strength, displaying their firepower with everything from the F-22 stealth fighters to the B-2 stealth bombers, flying them into and over South Korea. So, Katan, definitely a story we're going to have to keep watching.
Right, I know they're definitely afraid of those B-2s, that's for sure.
Now, for our next report, we turn to YPN's Larry McGee, who has the latest on the violence in Chicago and one man's unique efforts to document it. Larry?
There have been 71 homicides so far in Chicago this year, Jeff. That's less than the 114 which it had at this time last year, and some are calling that progress. Opting to look past the impersonal nature of the numbers, however, one man has chosen to present a more personal record of the destructive violence which has plagued the city of Chicago for years. Carlos Ortiz is a photographer who for the last 6 years has photographed the murderous carnage of Chicago's violence. Ortiz grew up in Chicago and was so moved by the death taking place all around him that he decided to document the death toll. The tragic and shocking photos are included in his project too young to die. And in explaining the purpose for his efforts, Ortiz says, when people don't look like us, we always say, well, that happens to those people. But what he has sought to do is place a face on the victims. So far, Ortiz has taken more than 20,000 images. He listens to police scanners at night and appears on the scene right beside police officers. He often follows the families through each heartbreaking step, including this photo of an aunt attempting to mop up the blood of her nephew who was murdered just right outside of her door. The city made national news for its 506 murders in 2012, but less noted, Ortiz says, is the 2,000 people who were wounded by gun violence as well. For 2 years, Ortiz has followed and documented the trials of one such victim, Andale Portit, who suffered spinal damage after being shot in the face at 14 years old. His mother, Detrina Portit, is his full-time caregiver. She relates in tears that her life has become his life. Her life is to support his life, to keep him inspired, and to let him know that he can still go on. These are the stories that Ortiz is bringing to light, helping us to realize that as opposed to a mere statistic, each wounding and murder in Chicago is in all actuality a precious and invaluable life which has been deeply affected or lost. For YPN News, I'm Larry McGee. Katan, Jeff, back to you.
Appreciate your report, Larry.
Interesting way to look at things. According to a group that monitors casualties, March was the bloodiest month ever. Now, we're not talking about Chicago anymore. We're talking about in Syria. We forgot the civil war that's been taking place there, and as many as 6,000 people were killed last month. And after 2 years of warfare, the estimated death toll hovers around 80,000 people. Now, the so-called rebel forces have been fighting the 42-year rulership of the Assad family.
Rebel commander Jamal Maroof is credited with being the first to shoot down a government fighter jet, which is a rare victory against the powerful Syrian Air Force. Maroof leads the Syrian Martyrs Brigade, a group that has received both guns and ammunition from outside Syria in order to continue fighting the Assad family.
Many cities in Syria have been reduced to piles of rubble. In the residential city of Marat Noman in northern Syria, 2/3 of the city have been destroyed and many residents have been displaced as the fighting continues. Residents there cringe with the sound of any overhead aircraft. They live in constant fear that their homes might be the next ones destroyed if the bombings continue.
The fighting in Syria has not only taken its physical toll on the people, but mentally as well. The psychological devastation of witnessing an attack can be just as injurious as physical damage. Now, one woman went into a complete state of shock after having her windows blown in and personal belongings destroyed in a recent attack. She was shivering uncontrollably, began hallucinating, and then repeated over and over again, Taida, Taida, which is plane, plane, as she remembered the sound of the aircraft coming over before the bombs hit their house.
Wow, that's amazing. Commander Maroof was asked what he would like to see the U.S. government do in Syria. He said, "Right now, we still do not have a no-fly zone. The regime is using long-range missiles. If we had a no-fly zone, we could take down the regime in a matter of weeks." When he was asked what he felt might happen if the U.S. doesn't help and the international community doesn't get involved, he said, "Either we will win the revolution or else the Syrian people will be wiped out." Yes.
Well, we report a lot about the news articles that show certain prophecies being fulfilled, such as the love of mankind growing cold, which is the morality of mankind diminishing, and the wars taking place in place after place. We also talk about the natural, unnatural disasters that are a result of mankind's sins from destroying the firmament. However, there is one prophecy being fulfilled that will bring a smile to your face and lift your spirits. That prophecy is of Yeshua Hawkins preaching the joyous message of the soon coming kingdom. Now, you can read about this soon coming kingdom and experience the joy for yourself by requesting your free copy of the Prophetic Word magazine and monthly newsletter.
You can contact the House of Yahweh by writing them at P.O. Box 2498, Abilene, Texas 79604. You can also call them at 1-800-613-9494. You can email them at info@yahweh.com. You can also visit the website www.yisrohawkins.com. And of course, all calls outside the United States, please dial the number on your screen.
Don't go anywhere. Up next, Yisro Hawkins. From all of us here at YPN News, I'm Jeffrey Heimerman.
And I'm Katan Alexander.
Thanks for joining us.